Episode number 97 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Jasmine Katatikarn. Jasmine is a fertility warrior who struggled to have a child for 6 years. After multiple IUIs and her second IVF, she was told that she had less than 1% chance of having a baby and to basically stop trying. However, Jasmine did not give up. Using her background as an artist, she applied an artist's mindset to overcome her roadblocks and design a life that gave her control of her fertility journey and life moving forward. As a result, she became pregnant within months of being told that she had less than 1% chance. Today, Jasmine has 2 kids, both through IVF. Using her designer point of view and tools, Jasmine now shows her clients how to take control of their own fertility journey as well. So welcome to the podcast, Jasmine.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So really cool. You actually reached out mentioning you're one of the first people I too have known or learned about that does creativity or incorporates creativity into the fertility world. And you've gone through your own fertility challenges and have learned to use your own innate creativity to help you get through it. So can you share your background, your journey?
Yes, of course, I'd be happy to. So my background, I was born and raised in New York, and I had a pretty good childhood, I have to admit. And I was kind of taught what many of us are taught by our parents and society, the path to the perfect life, right? The perfect life is get good grades, go to a good school, get a good career, get married, have the 2.5 kids, get a house in the burbs, work hard, right?
Yeah.
And retire. And that's like the formula that I was kind of ingrained in and taught. And honestly, I was following that formula. I didn't really question it that much. I got good grades. I went to a good school, check. I met someone in college. I had a good career. I got married, check. Like I was going along the perfect path. I thought I had it all worked out. And it came to the point where it's like, okay, now it's the time to have kids. And I still laugh at how naive I was at the time. I like had it, I'm like married by the time I was like 28. Okay, I'll like have fun for 2 years. And then when I'm 30, I'll just like have 3 kids, no problem by the time I'm 35. And I never questioned it because everything else kind of, I had road bumps along the way, but nothing that I couldn't overcome. And all of a sudden fertility came along. And I still remember, I feel like we must all go through this, like the first month you go off the birth control and you start trying and then you don't get pregnant after the first month. And it's like, wow, I thought it would work right away. Mm-hmm. And so like 3 months went by, I started getting worried. And then I remember I went to my doctor after 3 months because I'm definitely that kind of mindset mentality. It's like, oh no, what's wrong? Something was wrong. I want to be proactive about it. And she's like, no, keep on going. It takes a while to get off, the birth control. You've been on it for so long, that kind of thing. And another 3 months went by. And before I knew it, a year had gone by. And that's when we decided to go to a specialist. And we went to the specialist, the reproductive, the RE, and we did all the tests that everyone does, and everything came back normal. And at that point, I was probably 31. I still felt like, I still have plenty of time for this. And nothing was wrong, technically wrong, right? So we started just doing some IUIs without medication, just kind of naturally. And I think we had we did 3 IUIs and none of them worked, which I wasn't super surprised about, just because after looking at like the stats on the
Yeah.
IUI, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I was like, okay, just be
So
patient. And I was really trying to, and like,
before
yeah,
this, just a quick question, just to get the information is, before this, you were basically unexplained infertility. They didn't really, like, everything checked out, like your numbers checked out, everything checked out. Correct?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So since all the tests came back normal for both me and my husband, it was unexplained infertility, which, I mean, it's beyond frustrating for anyone. And then for me, just because, I definitely have that mentality where I need to control, like, if I knew what the problem was, I'm like, okay, I would like attack it full force. But unexplained infertility is so frustrating, as many of you guys know, because it's like, well, it should be okay, but we don't have an explanation, which,
Right.
yeah. So what that ended up leading me on the road to also is like trying everything, right? I feel like we all probably go down this path of Google of, what's going to work and what's not going to work. And of course, there's no definite answer. So during this time, I was also like kind of playing with all these different things. Like, I think in these early years, I did try acupuncture, but only like once or twice. I didn't go full force into it. And then I had another friend that's like, oh, you should do, like, if you ever, I think everyone knows, if you ever say something to someone that you might be having problems, they always have their own like remedy for it, right? So
Right.
then, and you end up trying it because you never know. And I would say, like, especially towards after a couple of years went by, and I'll get to it, like, if someone told me to like hop on one foot and cluck like a chicken and it's gonna work, I would have done it, because I'm just like, why not?
Yeah.
So for us, we did multiple IUIs, and nothing stuck. And the doctor was kind of like, at this one clinic, the doctor was like, oh, well, maybe you should consider IVF, because he didn't have any other remedy for us since the IUIs weren't working. And at this point, I end up losing track of time, but it's probably year 2 going into year 3, and I was like, okay, maybe we consider IVF. It felt a little scary to me at the time, just because it's so intensive. But at the same time, I was tired, right? At this point, it's like year 3 or 4. I'm like, I just want to get pregnant and have a baby. And this is when I got my first inkling that not all clinics are the same in a way.
Yeah.
Because what happened was, I didn't do any research when I went to this first clinic. I just kind of took the recommendation of my OBGYN and just went to the one that was associated with that hospital. And when I mentioned it to my father, who's a doctor, that I was going to consider IVF, and he's the first person that was like, well, if you're going through IVF, I would recommend you to go to a different clinic, a place with a bigger institution with better labs.
Yeah. So he
Yeah,
knew.
he knew, because he's a doctor. So,
Right.
and I guess I was very close. I should say I was
Well,
very
you're in
close.
New York and you have great
I
ones
know
there.
there's so many options, right? So at this point, I was so like, I didn't even actually tell my father that I was going through all this fertility stuff. I didn't tell anyone, because it's a very personal thing. And honestly, I think I felt a little bit of shame, because it was like my body wasn't doing what it was supposed to be doing. So the next step was, okay, I took my dad's advice and I went to a larger institution within New York City. But again, I will get to this, but like, I didn't do enough research. I just like picked, I was like, oh, that's a really good one. It's rated highly on, I think I actually listened to a podcast, and
Mhm.
it was the director of that clinic on that podcast. And I was like, oh, well, they must be really great, because
Yeah.
he's speaking there. So I went and I made an appointment there, and I actually spoke directly to that director. And I still remember the meeting. He was just like, oh, there should be no problem. Like, he was very confident in my ability to get pregnant. And he's like, we'll do IVF. It'll be, it shouldn't be a problem. You're still young. I think at that time I was like 33. And then the next step was, because of insurance reasons, I needed to do another series of IUIs before I could get to the IVF. So they're like, let's start you off with some more like IUIs to get you to see if maybe that would work. And I believe we did about 2 or 3 more IUIs there as well. And then finally it was time for IVF. And I remember this moment, it's like, okay, we're doing IVF. It's going to work, because it's IVF and you hear all these stories about it. It's like, that's going to be the fix all. And we did our first round of IVF there. I don't remember the specifics. I was never a big responder. I never got that many eggs. I think at most, the first one was maybe like 10, which is a lot for me. And probably like half of them fertilized. And what happened was, like, they call you up, with the progression. So by day 3, they're like, okay, be prepared to come in. They made the appointment for me for the day 5 transfer. It was going to be a fresh transfer at day 5. And I still remember I was actually like about to leave to go out the door to go for the transfer. And I got the phone call from the nurse saying, don't come in. None of the eggs made it to none of the embryos made it to blastocyst, and there's no transfer today. And I remember like
horrible,
being shocked. Like, I still remember like I need, because it was my first IVF. I was like,
yeah,
what? And she's like, yeah, I'm sorry. And then I was like, so not like, she's like, yeah, none of them were viable. And she's just like, okay, come in tomorrow to talk to the doctor. And it's devastating. You go through the whole thing, the meds, the whole procedure.
Yeah.
And then I felt like I didn't even get the chance to get the transfer,
Yeah.
And we went in the next day, and that's when we got our second diagnosis of poor egg quality. So they said, okay, well, now you're no longer unexplained infertility. We now know that it's probably poor egg quality, just because they saw the progression of the eggs. Of the embryos, and it just, didn't, like, by day 3 it was okay. By day 5, none of them, progressed. And of course, the first question I had was like, how do I prove my egg quality? And the doctor said, well, you can't. And I was like, that's like the one thing you don't want to hear.
That's not true.
I know. Well, that's also, and I actually pushed the doctor, and I was like, are you sure? Like, are you telling me there's?
And it drives me crazy, because then you're like sitting there and that's what he's telling you. And if you don't know better, you're like, okay, I guess that's what it is.
Exactly.
And that's not true.
Yeah. So when I get towards the next part of the story, it'll drive you even more crazy. So I did push her, actually. And then finally she's like, well, she was like very like apprehensive. She's like, well, some people find that acupuncture can help with egg quality. And I was like, okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
And then I asked
something.
her, I know, I had to really get it out of her too. And she was like very apprehensive. She's like, well, some people think that. So I was like, okay. And that's when I really got into acupuncture, actually. I got a recommendation for them, and I made an appointment like that next morning with the acupuncture specialist, she was amazing. She actually changed my whole journey, and it's the best decision I ever made. And what happened when I went to her is like, she went over my records, and it was the first time also where I met with someone within the fertility space that wasn't a doctor, that took my information and actually, I felt like really looked at it as an individual instead. And she was even like looking at things and said like, some of this stuff isn't lining up, but let's just take a look. So what we did was a detox for 3 months. So like, let's take a break. Let's do like detox your body, do a fertility kind of diet, and kind of prepare your body for the next IVF, before doing the next IVF cycle. So we did that, and it was really great. And at the same time, I did spend some time kind of getting to know myself a little bit better as well. Instead of like rushing to like go to the next step, I took some time to calm down, which was really nice. So the next IVF cycle, I thought, I was like, I prepared for this 3 months, and so it doesn't prolong it. I still remember I was in the acupuncturer's office actually doing the pre-acupuncture before the transfer, and right at like
But you had the retrieval?
yeah, so I had the retrieval. So
Yeah.
for everything I would have, yeah, so I went through it, had the retrieval, around the same results, if I remember correctly, like maybe 8 eggs and then 5 or 4 fertilized. Going into day 5, I believe like we had 3 that looked good at day 3. So it was like, positive, but it's also exactly similar to the past one. And I still remember I was nervous for this transfer day because of what happened before. And I was in the acupuncturist office, and I still remember like I was like calm and relaxed. And then she came in when it was done, and I was supposed to go to the hospital for the transfer. And I saw the look on her face, and I was like instantly knew something was wrong. And she said, she's like, so Matt, my husband, who was waiting in the waiting room, she's like, Matt got a call.
Oh.
And the same exact thing happened. Like the nurse said, none of them made it to blastocyst and don't bother to come in.
That's horrible.
And I still remember like walking across Central Park back home from the office, just like crying. And the second time where it just like, it didn't happen. And it was that point too, I think because at that point it was poor egg quality, right? And you feel like it's all on you, it's your body, there's something wrong with you. And also I was feeling a lot of guilt, to be honest with you, because I felt like I was the actual person standing in the way of my husband having kids too, which is an extra pressure on you. And I think on the way home from that walk too, I actually told my husband that he can leave. I was just like, I don't want, I'm surprised I'm still getting emotional thinking about it. It's like, because it's like some people are born to be something, but like the second I met my husband, I was like, you were born to be a father. Like I knew he was just gonna be an amazing father. And I said that, and I was being completely honest. Like I'm just like, I know I'll be fine, but I need you to be a father. But of course he said no.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think this is like a lot of the other emotional things that go on with this struggle. It's the guilt of, being part of a relationship and not being the barrier, right? So the next day, so I thought that would be my lowest point, but actually the next day at the doctor's office, when we met again with the doctor, I was like, I had already built myself up, as we do with this journey. I feel like it's like you go through these lows and then you have to like rev yourself up again, right? To keep on going for the next cycle or the next plan of action. And we sat in the office, and I was like, okay, so what's the next step, right? I was expecting her to have like a different protocol or something, but she just sat there and she said, she's like, well, I think your only option is egg donor or adoption. And at this point, I was 35 actually at this point. So it's like, it was a lot. And but I still felt young. I was healthy, and, other than, I guess, the poor egg quality, I didn't see a reason to just stop trying altogether. And I said to her, just like kind of I did the first meeting, I was like, is there really nothing that I could do to help to try to have my own biological children with my own eggs? And I still remember this so well. She just sat there and she said, I give you less than a 1% chance. And I asked her, I was just like, less than 1%? And I was like, I'm 35 years old. Are you really telling me I have a less than 1% chance and I should stop trying?
Good for you for asking
And
that.
and she just like, but I will say she stuck to it. She was just
Yeah.
like, I give you less than a 1% chance. And then she started talking about egg donors again and adoption. And I was just, and then she basically said that, you know, that's the only way she would proceed with me is if I went through an egg donor, that she would not even consider doing another IVF cycle with me, with my own eggs.
Wow.
And yeah, it was, and I still remember, like, here I am at 35 in my perfect plan. I was supposed to have 3 kids by now, you know. Instead, I'm sitting in this doctor's office and she's telling me, you have less than a 1% chance. And essentially telling me that I should stop trying and start looking for alternatives, right? The egg donor or adoption. And I left the office, I left that meeting devastated. Like, that was definitely the lowest part of my journey. And what happened next was, one, I remember I went straight to work. I don't know why I
Oh
went
my
straight to work,
God. Wow.
but I still remember that train ride to work. I was just like, I cried, and you know, my husband went to work. I went to work. I still remember it felt so surreal. Because it was early morning appointment. We just like kind of took a deep breath, hugged each other, and we both went off to work.
Oh.
I still remember that train ride on the way to work. I was just like, this can't. I was devastated. I was crying. I was just like, this can't be it. Like, is this it? Is this what? And it'd be so easy to feel that way, right? After, at this point, like 5 years of trying, a professional telling you that basically you should stop trying and you have less than a 1% chance. I mean, those stats are really daunting.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when I stopped and was like, no. In my gut, I felt like, my intuition felt like, no, but this was not it. Like, I am a big believer of like following what I feel. And
Yeah.
I would know if, like, because I'm not, I am able to pivot and know, you know, be like, okay, I'll consider these other options, but at the same time, I don't want to give up on something that I didn't feel like it was right. It felt like it was off somehow. So what I decided to do is, you know, on the way to work, I was thinking about it and about the past 5 years and all the things that had gone on. And I was like, maybe I'm approaching this wrong. Like, there's something that I'm not doing. And I was depending so much on others. Like, throughout the whole journey, I was like, you know, I respect doctors so much. My father's a doctor. And I think I realized, like, I was being proactive, but I was being too trusting in a way. And I started thinking about this, how I think about work obstacles. And what I do for work is I'm a lighting artist on feature animated films, which doesn't seem like it relate in any way. But what it did was, I was thinking about when I run into obstacles at work, how I tackle them, right? And I tackle them in a very different way. And it's kind of like this designer mindset way of looking at things. And that's when I was like, why can't I do this in my current life situation? And part of it was stepping back and stopping and looking at my situation and making sure I was focusing on the right thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And another part of it was also brainstorming and getting help from other people, kind of research, but like collaborating and brainstorming with other experts in the fields. And this is when I really was like, I need to talk to someone else. I need to get second opinions. I need to not rely so heavily on, you know, this one doctor's diagnosis, because she's just human too, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the next day, again, the very next day, I had an appointment with my acupuncturist. And I sat there with her and we brainstormed, essentially. she was with me. She's like, okay. And she helped me think of other solutions instead of, she's like, I totally get it. And she had all my, and it helped so much that, you know, she was with me for a while before. So it was kind of this expert that had an outside view of everything, because you're so close to it.
Yeah.
It's really hard to step back. So that's why talking with other experts is really helpful, especially in this situation. And we formulated a plan. She was just like, you know, maybe this clinic's not right for you. I have another recommendation for you, and even a specific doctor that she thought I'd work really well with. So like that next week I had an appointment with that doctor, and I went to the other clinic to try what he recommended. And his recommendation was very different. Like he definitely did not, he actually, I think he said he didn't agree with that less than 1% chance.
I like that.
Which is huge, right? Like just that comment alone is
refreshing.
Yeah, refreshing, and a reason why you really have to be, you have to self-advocate for yourself and get multiple opinions. And so we did, it's not, many people don't do it now, but we did it's called cold culture, which before you do your IVF, they basically, I'm not a medical person, so I might be explaining this incorrectly, so don't take me for it, but they basically take a sample inside you, and they recreate your environment in the petri dish instead of just using the generic whatever default one they use for everyone else. So when they retrieve your eggs, it lives within basically where, like, similar to your it's your environment.
Right. I think it's genius. When I was reading about that, it's really interesting. They don't do that as much anymore.
I heard they don't do it anymore, really, because it didn't prove to make that big of a difference.
Really?
So I say that because when I had my second child, they basically weren't really doing it anymore, but they decided to do it because it worked for me. But I get ahead of myself. So basically, they did that, and then I did the same thing with the IVF. Similar numbers, probably lower. Every time I do IVF, it was like a little lower because I was getting a little older, I think. And the biggest difference here too is that they were going to do a day 3 transfer and not a day 5 transfer, like they tried in my other clinic. And we did it, and I was, so nervous. But I got to the point where I actually got a transfer, which was like a huge success.
And you had 2 embryos, or?
Yeah, we transferred, I think we had 3 embryos that could be transferred, but we transferred 2. The third embryo did not make it to day 5 either. So that's very telling as well. And I got pregnant, with that. And so that was my third IVF, the first time I was able to even transfer. And the crazy thing was, it was just a couple months after that meeting where that doctor was telling me
less than 1%.
I had a less than 1% chance.
Wow.
And it was like, so it's just a couple of months difference. And I look back and I was like, I could have so easily, after 5 years of trying, so easily said, okay, that must be it. The doctor told me that, and I learned so much from that experience. And then fast forward, so at 37, I forget dates now, but I had 1 child. I was so grateful. So what inspired me to come out with my story, because honestly, this whole time, 5 or 6 years, it took 6 years from when I tried to start to having my daughter, I did not tell anyone. Like, barely. At the very last years, I told my immediate family, but that's it. Like, none of my friends was, I traveled. That was actually my way to cope with a lot of the things that were going on. Me and my husband just traveled like crazy during those 6 years, multiple trips a year. So from their perspective, all they saw was like, oh, Jasmine and Matt travel like to all these amazing places. And look, and now they have this cute little baby. And now they have baby pictures. And it's that realization when I realized that I was kind of feeding into this perfect life that everyone sees on social media.
Yeah.
And no one realized that I was struggling with infertility for 6 years.
Yeah.
And that's what finally inspired me to come out with my story in public to my friends and to everyone. And I
And how
actually,
did you do it?
so
If I may ask.
I did it on Facebook Live, which was terrifying. I still remember. So I announced that I was going to do it. I don't know. I don't even know how I decided to do this, but I announced like a day before that I was going to do it. So to hold myself accountable so I couldn't back out. And I still remember that morning waking up, and I had never remembered feeling so. I felt like I was in school again, like doing a big, like, I don't, and I was like,
that takes a lot of courage.
I know. And I mean, like, if you asked me again to do that, I'd probably like, I don't know. But, and I remember when I told my story, it took me almost like an hour and a half because I had never told my story before. And it was really, it released a lot of emotions for me, a lot of trauma that I felt like I was holding in. And also it inspired me to do more, because by me sharing it, I had so many people, reach out to me afterwards, like, oh my God, I never knew, or like, and that it made so much more sense, or like, more importantly, I had people reaching out like they had gone through similar things, or maybe they're currently going through similar things, and it really helped to hear it. And that's when I realized, like, I need to share this, especially when I look back of all the information I gathered from my experience, and also how I ended up approaching it at the end, was such a revelation for me that, and I also didn't see it that often. Like, so many people are just really focused on what procedures are you doing, what meds are you taking, like, and it's very clinical, and it's very like, and I get it, I was the same way. But I felt like I found this thing that really helped me in a positive way, regardless of the meds and everything like that. And I was like, I need to share this. And that's when I started. And what ultimately happened is I also decided to try for a second child. And I basically did that live in a way where I went through the whole, and I still remember when I decided to do it, my husband was like, what if it doesn't work? What if, like, because the chances are I was actually thinking it wasn't gonna, be successful, because, we have experiences, and he's just like, you're gonna have to be on camera live, basically like showing all the emotions. And I was like, well, that's kind of the point, right? It's like to, so if you look back, I actually have it's like Facebook Lives and journal entries of the whole procedure, like start to finish, the IVF, that ultimately has resulted in my second son, which I am so grateful for. And that is essentially my journey, and how I came out, and how it's continuing to inspire me to give back to the community, because this journey has changed me to the core.
That's amazing. It's so inspiring. I love the fact that you've come through something like this. And I love the fact that you're able to actually, I don't love the fact that you went through it, and that you had somebody tell you less than 1%, but taking that story and utilizing it for a story of hope. It's almost like you took one for the team, in the sense of having to experience that and then share it. And the fact that it's not even true, because so many people are listening to this right now that have had that type of news and are hearing this story of hope. And the fact that you had something, an intuition within yourself in the face of something. I mean, look, your father's a doctor, so your first authority figure, so to speak, is this doctor, and, you know, the parents, and one of your parents is, and then you're going in front of an authority figure that's telling you, hey, listen, I'm sticking by what I believe, and I'm standing firm, and you have less than 1% chance, and I'm going to say it twice, and I'm not even going to work with you further if you don't do what I think pretty much is what happened. And somewhere inside of you said no, like you
Yeah.
just felt it. You listened to your intuition.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know it's easy to say now, but I do believe I was meant to go on this journey too, even how painful it was. But I am so grateful for it, because yeah, I was meant to go on this journey. I've learned so much about myself, things that honestly, if kids had come easily to me and I had gone along the path of the perfect life, I honestly would probably not be as good of a mom. I probably would not be as good of a person as I am now, because I've learned so much. And I completely agree that it's because of this journey that I'm here talking to you, trying to help others in their own, because exactly that, like, I can't forget that moment of sitting there. And what would my life look like now if I had just agreed with that, or just, you know, said, okay, that doctor must be right. Let's move on to, you know, whatever path I decided to move on after that. It's really crazy to think about that. And I feel like so many women, especially after years, like the fertility journey is hard,
Yeah.
and it beats you down. And it would have been so easy for me at that point to just give in and say, okay, this authority figure says this, I guess it must be right, you know? So that's exactly why I think being here talking to you and telling the story to others is so beneficial.
So beneficial. Now, here's the thing. We have this similarity in the fact that we're both artists and designers, and we understand the perspective of an artist. Now, when you're an artist, you need a couple of things, I think, to allow you to really create. One of them is trust. You need to trust your own intuition, or where it's guiding you in the process. That's really the creative process, is trusting that. And you also need to stand in the face of the critic. I call it the cynic. There's a
Yeah,
cynic voice. I know you know what I'm talking
I
about.
know. That's why I'm like, hey, this is yeah.
And we see it because we go through this process.
Mm-hmm.
As artists, you kind of face that cynic every single day, and it doesn't stop. It's
Yeah.
always there. It doesn't matter how advanced you are, you're always going to hear that voice of the cynic. That voice of the cynic is in every one of us. Every single one of us has it. We hear it. Some of us choose to not take it too seriously. What's interesting is that some of us decide to use that voice. We take jobs, and we start to work in a certain position, and we trust our system, and we believe in that cynic. And we not only believe in that cynic, then we start to give it to our clients or our patients, or we take that cynic's voice and amplify it. Not because we're bad, it's because we believe that that's the only way. It's what we've discovered, what science has shown. This is it. Based on, we look at our future as based on our history and our past. Since this is what happened in our past, this is what's going to happen in our future. The creative mind, we know that in order to create, in order to dream, we have to believe in a different future. That's the only way. We have to have faith in that future to allow it to come to fruition. And it really comes down to our free will, our choice, right in that moment. Like, do we take the choice of the place of the cynic, which feels very safe, because the cynic will always tell you, this is all the only hope you have. This is the only option you have. Let's be realistic here. Let's be realistic. That same realism that our parents gave us when we were choosing an art career versus like that every day.
Yes.
So it's interesting because you're kind of like almost like in my soul tribe. I think we really get that perspective because of this whole thing. So when we're going through this process of creating, and we're going through this process of allowing that creation, we have to have faith. It's the only way for the creative process to come through. Otherwise, we're going to have the cynic, and the cynic loves to stop us before we even start.
It's true.
Like, who are you to create this? Who are you to do this? Who are you? So creativity, you know, we talked about that whole connection of creativity is, it's conception. Conception can start in the mind. Conception can start in the spirit. Conception is what starts the reproductive process in our body. But it's the same thing, except it's just in different dimensions.
I agree. Yes. And yes, as an artist, the cynic is always there, and we learn how to, you know, utilize that information, but not have it be our future, as you say. And what I also like about an artist mindset is that, for me, it's, you're always looking for solutions. There's never only just one solution to, you know, the perfect painting, or there's multiple ways that you can reach your destination, where I feel like that really helped me at the end too, is knowing that there's multiple ways. Because I think in the beginning, and many of us are so focused on, the only way I'm going to be happy is in my future is having this child or getting pregnant. And it's that soul feeling that there's only one way that really creates all this anxiety and stress also, and puts so much pressure on that one solution. And what I think as an artist, having all, like, being, stepping back and having multiple solutions, like, oh, I can get to the end point by doing this, or this. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, like, okay, it's not all going to be dependent on this one IVF cycle, or, you know, what this one doctor says to me. It gives you options, which I think is also really beneficial and ties into kind of the creative process of thinking about things.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you say that, looking for different solutions, always looking for solutions, because they're always there. And you see that. I mean, you're trained as an artist, as a designer, to look for them. And it's interesting kind of how it shifted to finally bringing that into your own path. And I love this. I love what you're doing. I love that you're incorporating it into the fertility journey. It is this end goal kind of mentality that keeps us trapped in this tunnel vision, and also just really absorbing whatever that doctor's psyche is. And it could be, so every doctor is human. They all have their own human perspectives, and we don't necessarily need to adapt or adopt every single one that we see. And I also love the fact that you listen to your intuition. Can you talk to us about that? Really, the importance of listening to yourself.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I've always gone with my gut feeling on multiple things. And honestly, when the doctor was telling me that there was no chance, essentially, less to 1%, my head kept saying, or my heart, I don't know which one, kept saying, like, no, this can't be right. This can't be right. Like, and I wasn't sure if I was just being stubborn, to be honest with you, or I was just like, no, it didn't feel like the end. Like, not that was the end, but I didn't feel like that point was the end of my journey. And at that point, I had been through so much. But each stage, I felt like, okay, this feels right. This is going to be the next step. And when she was telling me my next step was egg donor or adoption, I was like, there's something in me was like, no, that's just not right now. And not that was a wrong step, but like my feeling at that moment was like, no, it's not time. It's not time for that. And I can't explain it. I guess it's that feeling that I'm going to trust myself, even though I'm not a doctor, right? I'm not on the other side of the table, but I know myself. No one knows yourself better than you, right? And that's one of the biggest things why you need to be your own advocate. And also, no one's going to care about you more than yourself either. So
It's your journey.
it's your own journey,
Yeah.
and you know it best. So that's where I say, like, you know, be your own best self advocate. If you feel like something's not right, then don't try to do yourself either, right? Start looking for tools, or start looking for consults, or different, build your own team in a way, right? Your own personalized team where you can meet with several different doctors, meet with someone. Also, I found it really beneficial to, you know, I have full respect for doctors in Western medicine, but it was also such a nice balance to talk to someone like my acupuncturist, right? That comes from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of was a very well-rounded perspective on things. And that's another thing from the creative mindset. It's like, you want different perspectives. The
Right.
more perspectives you get, the more ideas you're going to get, and
Correct.
the more possible outcomes you get, right? So I think of it as like research. Like, stop, do your research, get a lot of different perspectives, and then do what feels right for you. And I think that's exactly what I ended up doing
Yeah, that's
after that meeting. And that's what resulted in, there's no one pinpoint, but it definitely helped me in my process that led me to become pregnant within a couple of months of that meeting.
that
It,
is
it could
just crazy to me. It's just it's an amazing story. It's such an inspiring story just to hear that, and then really with somebody who's so certain, and then within 3 months of that,
yeah,
we're not talking a year.
I know. That's the thing. It's crazy. I never did, but I always thought about writing her a letter.
I
Um,
think you should. I was thinking about that. I think you should. And you could say it
yeah,
in a way that's, you don't have to, you could just say it in a way, just really matter of fact, but explain, also in detail how you were feeling.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's never too late. And it's more, I don't have any ill feelings towards her at all. I know, like anything, doctors are only human, and they're doing their jobs, and they're saying what they think is best, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I did want to make her aware, just so maybe next time she has that talk with someone, to maybe suggest getting a second opinion.
Yeah.
Just be like, she could be totally candid and be like, this is my opinion. Before you move forward with whatever, I I completely recommend that you go and get a second opinion.
Yeah.
That's like my only suggestion to her. So it doesn't feel like she's like you know, the end, the end
Yeah.
note, and there's no other option for that person.
I think that would be really great, just really to educate,
Mhm.
because ultimately you'd be helping the people that she's going to see in the future.
Yeah. Okay. I will do that this week, actually.
And let me know. Keep me
Yes.
posted. It's interesting. I had the same thing. Similar just recently, around COVID time. I had a patient come in, and she had come in. I met her a couple of weeks before quarantine, and she had told me the same thing. She got, it's not exactly the same, but a doctor said there's no way you can get pregnant on your own, basically. Like,
Mm.
your numbers are terrible. You've been doing this for a long time. It wasn't unexplained. I mean, her numbers weren't positive as far as the labs go. And so he basically said, there's no way you can. And she was like, no, I'm not buying that. She liked a
Mm.
similar kind of feeling. And she came to me, and we worked together. And I literally don't even feel like I spent that much time with her. I think it just was also her determination, but she ended up getting
Mm.
pregnant at the beginning of quarantine.
Wow.
She almost couldn't believe it. Like, and it came back as a false negative for the first week, actually. And I was almost ready to, and I hesitate on doing this, giving her some pressure points, because we were only doing virtual to help get things to flow. It's like, that's interesting because she's never late. I said, but why don't you just check one more time? And she checked, and sure enough, she was pregnant. But I say after, I mean, she's pregnant right now. So afterwards, I would say, once she has the baby, then write the letter.
Yeah.
And just because it's important for doctors to be aware of
Mm-hmm.
the messages and the labels that they're giving out.
I
I'm sure they're
agree.
well-meaning, but it's important to educate them. You know, we never get above education.
That's true. We're always learning. I learn every day.
Yeah, and we all do. So when you work with clients, how do you walk them through and help them get through this whole journey?
Yeah. So the steps, it's very I don't want to say it's very easy, but it's very intuitive, and it's really refreshing, I think, for a client to go through this, because the first step is one, just getting to know yourself, because I feel like through this process, it's really easy to get lost in
Yeah.
all the procedures, the meds, what you're supposed to be taking, and then you don't stop to see what your actual goals are, what your own priorities are, because everyone's different, right? Everyone wants different things in life. So the first step is like getting to know yourself, getting to know your values, getting to know what you love, what you hate, so you know that you're going in the right direction to whatever your goal is, to lead this happy, fulfilling life. And then the second step is to kind of reframe what 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 you're going towards. Is, I feel like for me in the beginning, I was like, my goal is to get pregnant, to have a baby, like anyone else's goal. But when I reframe and I step back and I was like, wait, is that really the goal? What will having a baby do for me? What will being a mother do for me? And then it forces me to step back and see, like, actually, it's not one, the baby's not the only way to achieve those feelings or whatever goal that I'm trying to achieve. There's multiple ways, and this goes into like how there's always multiple solutions
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
fulfilling your life and your happiness, and also a bigger picture than just the baby, because I feel like we put so much pressure on having this baby, but then we find that, you have this baby and you're like, oh, wait, I'm not happy. What happened? It's just like, it's because we're focusing on maybe not the right things in order to lead that like fulfilling and happy life. And so that's the second step. And then it's the brainstorming, right? It's kind of the collaboration of how to achieve your goals in multiple ways and looking from different perspectives, similar to how I talked to my acupuncturist after that, and she helped me have a different perspective and different solutions. And then finally just taking action. So it's, finding solutions and then actually putting them into action in positive ways and multiple ways too, so that you're fulfilling different parts of your needs that you discovered in like step one of your values. So when you're going through this journey that could last, it could last a couple months or it could last years, um, you're always building on yourself, you're always investing in yourself, and you never feel like you're just waiting for your life to begin. You're living your life in a really fulfilling way as you go through this. And the years that I was trying, I I gained so much, not only like through travel and experiences, but just personal development. Because before before that, I was on the rat race, right? I was just going. I never bothered to stop to think about what I really wanted. Do I really want to live in the burbs with, the white picket fence,
Hmm.
or like, things like that? And I feel like it's funny, quarantine has kind of forced people to do that too, to like stop and
Yeah.
reflect. And I feel like fertility also helps you do that too. It like forces you to kind of stop and it's actually a really great opportunity to give yourself a reason to focus on yourself
Hmm.
for the first time.
Yeah.
For me, because I was so busy, checking all my perfect boxes, working really hard at work, and it was the first time where I was like, wait, I'm going to slow down and
Mhm.
actually talk to, like, figure out what I want. My body's maybe trying to tell me something I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I that's basically what I do, and give it a different kind of creative spin on it. and I love it. I think it's really a breath of fresh air compared to all the talk about the meds and the things that you have control over, but honestly, you don't have control over that
Yeah.
stuff, right? And it allows you to take control of your life in this way that no matter what happens, it's going to be positive.
Yeah.
Which is what I really loved while I was on my, like, no matter what happens, I am investing in myself, and that's always going to be a positive thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's such a great reframe. I love the fact that you say take it as an opportunity. I think often just in our modern culture, we don't take challenges as opportunities, and sometimes we do, but I think that when you look at it that way, it just empowers you at a whole different level.
Yeah, I agree. Look at everything as an opportunity, even the things that you think are, you know, negative and not good. Maybe step back and see how you can use that to your advantage.
Yeah, for sure. So if there's something that you, like your modern day self, can tell your self, your fertility journey self when you first started, what would you say to her?
To stop and do your research before diving in head first, because that's what I did. I mean, that's what I did not do, I should say. Like, I put in too much trust into doctors and clinics, to be honest with you, that I did not do any research. I just picked a clinic, thought, it's got a good name. I'm going to listen to this doctor. And I feel like if I had stopped and done my research first, kind of what I did before was successful on the IVF, I could have saved a lot of heartache and years, because everyone's different, right? Everyone's unique, and that's a good thing. So just because one clinic works well for someone, it might not be the right clinic for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, even I think about it when I told my story. I had a good friend that was actually going through fertility challenges, and it was a very different challenge than mine. She was able to get pregnant, but she was having miscarriages. And after hearing my story, she was like, okay, I'm going to go to the doctor, right? And the doctor actually did suggest she could do an IVF cycle and get tested. So, and do all that stuff. And she talked to me, and I think she was thinking that I would be like, yes, do IVF, And she was like, I heard you got pregnant through IVF, and I'm going to do it. And I was like, wait, hold on. And I feel like and we all do it, right? We hear like, oh, that person got pregnant this way, so I'm going to do it exactly that way. But I was like, no, your situation is very different. You have gotten pregnant naturally twice already. And the doctors don't see that there's any problem, except, there was a miscarriage, but, the step, and I was just like, and I talked to her, and I was like, IVF is really intensive. You're putting all these meds into you. It's, don't do it unless you really feel like that's your last. I don't want to say your last option, but I was like, be a little patient, because at that point she hadn't even been trying for a year, and she had gotten pregnant so easily. And then she was like, this makes so much sense. And I knew the type of person she was. She was a very natural person, where feeding herself all these medications would have really hurt her, personally, in a way, like the type of person she was. And she's like, okay, you're right. Let me take a break for a month or two or whatever and try. And within like those next 3 months or so, she got pregnant again naturally, and she has a beautiful baby girl.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
So she didn't have to go through the IVF. But
yeah,
that's where I say, like, this is where it's like, be your best advocate, own best advocate, and listen to multiple things. Like, yes, IVF was the way it worked for me, but maybe it's not the best option for you. Maybe so take everyone's information, but then personalize it to yourself.
Right.
Think about your own situation, because everyone's unique. So that's what I guess I would wish that I had done in a way is basically stop and not try to go fast forward and go with action, but maybe stop, gather some great information and different perspectives, and then choose what was right for me personally, is what I wish I could have told my old self.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to benefit so much from what you're telling them right now, because they're probably your old self right now, going through what your
Yeah.
old self went through. So this is amazing. I really love your perspective. I love your story, and I love what you're doing with it, really, like taking it and helping so many other people. So thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you? So if people want to work with you and they want to learn more about you.
Yeah. You can find me. I have a free training where I talk about the 4 misconceptions during a fertility journey. And then I also give you kind of an insight on a course that I teach that teaches you this design mindset of how to approach your fertility journey in the way that I kind of discussed, where you make sure you, one, get to know yourself, get to know what your focus is, what your values are. Two, make sure that you're focusing on the right things. What are your goals? And make sure that it is the right goal to be focusing on, so you're not misdirecting your energy. And then brainstorming and thinking of multiple and creating multiple solutions to get there. So it really frees your mind, an anxiety level. Like imagine, I remember in the beginning, whenever I go into an IVF cycle, or any cycle, I'll be like, this has to work. If this doesn't work, like, just tell me if it's going to work, because I was
Yeah.
putting so much pressure, right, on that one thing. And the difference in the feeling that, I wouldn't stop trying. I think people fear that if they if they start brainstorming multiple solutions to their fertility struggle, they're like, oh, I'm giving up on that one
Right.
way. It's actually not true. One, you can fully still actively go in that direction, which I did as well, but it gives you this sense of relief, of pressure and anxiety, knowing like, if this doesn't work, it's okay, because I have plan B, plan C, plan D. And it's almost funny. I feel like you hear all those stories where I've never experienced it, but when you say like, oh, they got pregnant after they stopped trying, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's something to be said about that, where it's like, because they probably released all that pressure from themselves
Yeah.
of trying, that they were finally able to relax and possibly get pregnant. And I kind of think of the way I approach it with the designer mindset as a very
Yeah.
similar way, because
Yeah.
you kind of relieve the pressure, but you still actively are trying.
Yes.
Um, so it's like a way of like tricking your mind in a way.
Yeah, I call it Wu Wei. I mean, I don't call it Wu Wei. It's called Wu Wei. Wu Wei is a Taoist term. It's called
Oh,
effortless effort, and it's
okay.
basically how nature works. Nature tries without trying, and
Mm.
it's getting to this balance of doing but not doing.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
it's complete designer mindset. You're actively translating, but you're listening at the same time. You're allowing for the inspiration to come through. And what's inspiration? It's like life. It's
Mm.
life coming through you into your hand and into whatever's in front of you.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to have to look that up. I've never heard of that,
Oh, Wu
actually.
Wei's everything.
Okay.
I actively practice Wu Wei, and I encourage people to really bring that into their life in general, because I really do believe that that's the essence of how nature intended us to be.
Yeah, I agree. And then, yeah, so that's how your
I
listener can
think you
find
would
me
definitely
through
relate
the.
to it.
Yeah, I think I already relate to it. I just
Yeah.
didn't know that that was a thing. I feel
Yeah.
like that happens so often. I was like, really?
Yeah.
Um, it's so funny. And then, yeah, so they can find me in that free, like, I encourage everyone to do that free training. And then also through Instagram at Jazz Katat, where you can see my doodles that, I use as my creative outlet as well.
I love them.
Yeah.
They're awesome. They're so much fun to look at. I really enjoy what you have on there.
Thank you. I enjoy doing that. My daughter is now like an active participant. She'll see me drawing on my iPad and she'll be like, "Can I do it? Draw more hearts." The reason why there are so many hearts in my doodles on my Instagram is because my daughter is always like,
That's the
"Where are the hearts?
cutest.
Give me more
I
hearts."
love the
So
hearts.
now,
Tell her I love the hearts.
okay, I will. So that's the reason why there's hearts everywhere. She's like, "More hearts, Mom, more hearts," and I'm like,
That's
"Okay,
great.
more hearts."
Oh,
So
so that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jasmine, again for coming on today.
yeah, thank you for having me.